system that they're working on. So we're going to have 2 hangouts today, everyone. I just want to let everybody know that. Bytemaster, of course, you're welcome to remain here and participate. Also, obviously, everybody else who's here, you're welcome to participate as well. With that said, Bytemaster, do you mind if I get started with this?
Let's rumble.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to another Beyond Bitcoin Hangout. Today is January 8th, which is a Friday in 2016. This is our first hangout of 2016. With Bytemaster for the weekly project updates. So thank you, everybody, for attending. For those who are not familiar with how this format works, we have it set up where Bytemaster comes in, gives us updates on what CNX is working on for BitShares, and sometimes gives us some information or some ideas that he's thinking about. And then we open it up to community questions. Anybody is more than welcome to ask a question or give a comment or points, both vocally, outwardly, or they can type into the text box, in the chat box in the Mumble client itself in the bottom left-hand corner if they don't feel like speaking up. With that said, I normally would move on to Bytemaster's updates, but I do want to give one quick call to action for our community. We have this ability to make tokens now.
We lost you, Fuzzy. Can anybody else hear me?
I can hear you.
Did I just cut out?
You did.
Where did I cut out at?
Way back there. Quite a bit ago.
Thank you.
Ability to make tokens.
We have, yeah. Well, in the BitShares decentralized exchange, not every token is going to be a multi-million-dollar token at first, but grassroots things start small and get big, right? So we have these tools here that you can actually, if you have a UIA or you know somebody who has a project that has a UIA, you can share drop on the guest book of attendees who are attending these hangouts. And they are among the most active members of our community. So it's a pretty important little target demographic and a great way of getting your token noticed. And who knows, if you do something that catches my eye, I might actually advertise it a little bit in our hangouts too, the week that you give it out. So with that said, Bytemaster, could you please move on to I'll pass you the torch and start with the updates.
All right, it's been 3 weeks. A lot has happened. I've tried to keep everyone up to date on my latest thoughts through my blog. If you haven't seen my recent blog posts, you might want to check it out. I'm going to address some of those topics here today as well. It's a new year. I felt the need to refocus on vision, the direction that I would like to see BitShares move. In just general concepts like that. But before I get on to the vision, I'll give a brief update on what we've done in the past 3 weeks. Someone keeps cutting in here. It's kind of distracting.
Yeah, I'm monitoring it and trying to find it, but I'm not seeing it at present.
Okay. So most of the team took about about a week off for holidays, spending time with the family. So there's only been about a week's worth of progress. We've started work on the stealth.
Bytemaster just dropped off.
I'm still talking. Can you hear me?
I can now.
No, we lost you.
What was the last thing you heard me say?
Started working stealth.
Okay, so we started working on stealth. Valentine has made progress on the user interface there with the dashboard showing you your contacts and private accounts. And James Caffey has been working on migrate. There's a ticket on the GitHub that outlines all the different things that he's going to be doing, but the APIs for doing the JavaScript necessary for that. So we've documented what those APIs are. Michael has implemented placeholder APIs in the C++ so that until the JavaScript is done, we can just call the C++ code from JavaScript to have all the calculations done. That's not ideal in the long run because it compromises privacy and reveals private keys, but it does allow us to move forward in testing the higher level features while we work on optimizing the JavaScript. So I just wanted to give that update there that we've received payment from Once Upon a Time and have been actively moving toward our goals there. Outside of stealth, we've got the Polynix-like API in the wallet witness node that should be merged in to a future release of BitShares, but it's all the code is done and working on GitHub. So anyone who wants to build bots will have an easier time. You won't have to figure out how to do all of the price things and converting fixed point math and things like that. You'll just have interface and API very similar to what Polynix has. So I'm pretty happy with the work that Michael's been doing there. He's a new addition to the team. That was one of his first tasks. So I'm very happy about that. So that's where we are on stealth. Now let's talk about vision. Vision's important because it helps us keep track of why we are here, why we get up each day, what's the meaning behind what we are doing. And vision is distinct from strategy. Strategy is what we're doing today, tomorrow, and next week. Vision is where we're going to be in 5-10 years. And vision helps us identify things that may or may not be in alignment with the long-term vision. So examples of things that could have been avoided had I maintained a stronger commitment to the vision is the licensing back and forth, that waffling. We would have just gone straight open source the whole time had we checked everything that we were doing against the long-term vision. So my long-term vision for what I've been trying to do with my own life has been free market solutions for securing life, liberty, and property. And long before I started BitShares, and the idea of BitUSD was even conceived, I was working on the concept of creating a community for mutual aid, cooperation to secure liberties, insurance against injustice insurance, and things like that. So that's a business area that I am personally very interested in. And the reason for creating BitUSD and BitShares was to have a currency platform to underlie the greater purpose, which is to bring people together to help one another from unexpected and undeserved events in life. I believe I've discussed the mutual aid society concepts here on Mumble a little bit, but I've really got into much greater detail in my recent blog posts about how I would see a mutual aid society working, and why I think that it's an easier sell and targets more people than a decentralized exchange. But this led to a huge debate on the forum about, should we work on the DEX or mutual aid society, or what should I be doing on any given day? And that was a very helpful debate. And what I'd like to have BitShares be is a platform where anyone who wants to develop a business, whatever the business can be, is welcomed. And that any business that can be built on BitShares helps BitShares. And the attitude that we can only do one thing or two things, or that attitude is not best for BitShares. We shouldn't exclude, we should include. So there's been a whole list of things that we could do on the blockchain. Everything from prediction markets to mutual aid societies and things like that. So I had a blog post about the things I like about Ethereum, and another one about benefits of proof of work. Those were, on the surface, appear to be 180, but they're not really. So I'd like to discuss some of the things I like about Ethereum. I like that if I'm a business, I don't have to ask anyone's permission to build on the platform. And all the developers are welcome to add new features they can do new smart contracts. The downside to Ethereum is that you're limited to their scripting environment and transaction throughput. But in principle, developers are welcomed there. Their ideas can be incorporated. So I would like to see that attitude of welcoming new ideas be accepted. There should be almost no reason to reject having a feature put on BitShares. Particularly if it's not changing any other feature in the system. It's new. And this gets into the whole fee-backed asset debate. A lot of people see fee-backed assets as stealing value that could have gone to BitShares. And then there's the whole debate that we've been having of, well, should we privatize things to get investment on particular projects, or should we try to socialize everything and fund it through worker proposals? I'm a big fan of market-based approaches to things, and socialization of things doesn't work because not everyone sees the same value in the same features. And those that do see the value would invest an order of magnitude more in one thing so they can concentrate and focus, and then they get the rewards. So to the extent that you separate risk from reward, you also compromise decision-making ability and incentive. There's little incentive to fund things as a whole, but there's a lot more incentive to get involved on particular projects like stealth or prediction markets. So bottom line is, I am going to be very welcoming of any and all features that people want to add to BitShares. as in new operations, new smart contracts, and BitShares as a platform versus BitShares as a DEX. The decentralized exchange, of course, is a core feature for making BitShares as a platform viable. I mean, people who create fee-backed assets have a market where those assets can trade. And you can have all kinds of trust-free investment opportunities based only on individual features. So I've been talking for a while now. Take any questions.
Does anybody want to speak up and give any opinions on any of the topics covered at this juncture, or should I move forward with my limitless list of questions?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is a question for you, Bytemaster, about what your feelings are with regard to making announcements in your blog, etc. Because you can see how, and this is not the first time it's happened, people misconstrue what your intent is behind your postings, and oftentimes they go in a totally different direction. So if you say that the Maz idea is a long-term, 5-year, really long-term thing, even though you did make it clear, in my view, that it was something that you were personally doing, not a BitShares directive. But people do take things out of context, and they seem to put a lot of stock into what you say, which is a good thing. But you've got to be cautious, and I guess this is not the first time that type of thing has happened. So what is your take on that perspective?
Sure. What I'm looking for in my personal life and my personal goals is the same thing that every other person, any other entrepreneur in BitShares is looking to do. They're looking to make a lot of money by building some product or service that really grows in value. So what I'm looking to do is find some business I can build on BitShares where I get to keep the majority of the reward for the work I'm doing, whereas versus being an employee of BitShares and taking a paycheck. Those are two different mindsets. An employee comes, they work, they get paid for their time, and they might have a small bit of equity in the system, but the vast majority of the wealth produced by their work goes to other people. So I'm looking for non-linear income generating techniques, and that's just what everyone should be doing. Selling your time for money is the least effective approach in general. There's all kinds of things you can read online about selling your time for money and how that's both risky and not the most productive use. So when it comes to BitShares, I'm looking for I'm looking for a business that I can build on BitShares. And that's why I was looking at mutual aid societies, because there is a business that I can put there and I can sell, and I can use fee-backed assets and other things like that on the BitShares platform to reward me for that investment in that particular industry. So when I post things on my blog, I do two things. I want to share my ideas and my vision so that I can find other people who share similar ideas and vision. I also want to provide my input into the community for BitShares. The perhaps most controversial post on my thing that was taken out of context was my benefits of proof of work post, where I put a big disclaimer right on top that I don't want to change how voting is allocated or the dilution rate of BitShares, that is locked in for BitShares. And despite that disclaimer, at
Oh,
the
we
very
don't read those disclaimers, Bytemaster.
yeah, so I'd like to reiterate that I'm dead serious. Not only I like the ideas, and I think it's an interesting set of ideas, but I firmly believe that's a bad idea to do that for BitShares. That type of change for BitShares would break all the promises and expectations of everyone with respect to which direction BitShares should go. So anyone who's thinks that I might have intentions to change BitShares or propose to change BitShares in that way, rest assured, that's not the case. I wrote that blog post because someone challenged me to reconsider proof of work. So I got to thinking about proof of work, and then I just was inspired to write down my thoughts. So it led to lots of interesting discussion. And that's the goal of it, is to have interesting discussion. So I don't know how to prevent people from jumping to conclusions. But I'm not going to stop expressing my opinions because I think that's going to do a disservice both to me and to others who value what I have to say. Because it's through sharing our insights and our beliefs that we attract other people who think like us. If we do something controversial, other people will push back, and that pushing back sharpens both parties here. So I guess that's my stance there.
Thank you.
answer-
That answers
if
the
I
question
may,
very well.
If I may, I'd like to just speak up for a moment, because I've been sitting here and watching, we've all been sitting here watching BitShares grow, and we know that, there is we can call Bytemaster the de facto leader, I guess, to a degree, but at the same time, we all recognize, including Bytemaster, that BitShares can't just be Cryptonomex and their team. So it's, for me, every time I see Bytemaster make comments, I don't necessarily think of it as something that is set in stone. It might be just thinking about an idea and bringing it to the community to see what everybody's input is on it. So, it's this frustrating thing is here. It's kind of like, we get together with Bytemaster every week, but at the same time, it almost makes it so people sometimes feel like he is the only person who can make these changes or make changes. And we're starting to get to that point where now we're starting to figure out ways of doing making some of those decisions on our own too, right? So just something to keep in mind for everybody, and at least from my perspective.
So I'd like to take a moment to discuss some of the ideas, the founding ideas of BitShares. And the mindset of our community. And a lot of this mindset has been driven because of things I've expressed, and I've attracted people to BitShares who resonated with the things I was saying. But I think most people who know me know I am always willing to reevaluate everything I believe in the face of new facts and lessons learned in life. I viewed the blockchain as a business, as a DAC. And that mindset early on has created a culture of not wanting to get the most value, wanting to make sure things are profitable. And it's created a culture of being stingy. Stingy with pay, stingy with bringing new people in. We've got a whole bunch of people. No one wants to be diluted anymore. No one wants to, but everyone wants profit. Everyone wants to see it successful. Everyone wants those things. And it really cuts us off, and it sends the message that BitShares sends to the rest of the world is one of greed and selfishness, and I'm not going to do anything I don't get paid for. That kind of mindset, and that really pushes a lot of people off. So I've been trying to figure out and learn from how our attitude and our mindset affects how other people perceive the project and their willingness to get involved. So I'm a firm believer in capitalism and the idea that you need to align incentives so that those who do the work are rewarded for the work. And generally recognize that when you socialize things, economic calculation goes out the window. Brindle's on your echo. So the feedbacked assets and other things like that have helped return an avenue of growth to BitShares that doesn't involve diluting the stakeholders. But I still think there's this idea that by not diluting, you're adding value. And there's this whole concept of, can we just mute Brindle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm about to. Sorry, man.
Because we have a scarcity mindset in terms of funds and our willingness to reward people for contributing stuff to BitShares, it's really holding us all back. Versus a more open and inclusive mindset of, hey, let's give tokens to people for doing things. So I think that the community and the network effect of people is ultimately the most important thing. We're all in this together. We're all co-founders of something. And if you have a startup and all the co-founders, they've got their equity, and now they're all going out there and they're trying to sell a product, and that no one wants to give any equity to raise money or to pay people to do things. At the end of the day, that's a company that is so worried about holding on to what it has that it's going to slip through its fingers. But obviously, I guess what I'm suggesting is we have the ability to pay people to do things, and that we should focus on growing, and we should spend every penny we can on the most productive things that we can, because that's the only way to grow. Now, people say if you start doing this, it's going to put a lot of sell pressure on the token, so on and so forth. And that's also short-term thinking. The stakeholders in Cryptonomex, they can't sell the tokens or the shares they have. They can't sell it for years. So when I look at a low price on something like BitShares, I say, okay, that's a a sign that there's not liquidity at this point in time. There's still more liquidity than something like a Cryptonomics share. But it's about getting people who want to be part of something and rewarding them for being part of it. So we should try to create opportunities here for more developers to come in and work on things. And I don't want to monopolize it. And I don't want to be, I recognize there's tremendous fear of, dilution leading to a chain reaction that causes the price to fall to zero. Right? And that's the fear that has everyone being very concerned. But you look at all the other cryptocurrencies, they're diluting far more than BitShares to pay miners to do worthless work. And they're still valued higher than BitShares. The valuation comes from people getting involved, working toward a common goal, a common vision, and getting something. Things like brownie points and so on. They rewarded people and recognized people. And even though they're not worth very much, they're still, the recognition is important to growing community. Community is important.
And they're worth a lot to the people who are part of the community around you.
Yes. So when it comes to BitShares are our community's brownie points. They're how we should recognize people who are doing good things for the community and for our for BitShares. So there's another aspect to all this. Right now, you have to buy into BitShares. There's no way to earn into BitShares. The worker proposal process right now is very much, it's too difficult. No one wants to campaign. There's no way to get little micro rewards. But I definitely think we should look at ways to allow people to earn into BitShares. Because if you can earn in, you can get some stake, you can be part of the community, you can do little things. That can have a big impact on the growth of anything. You look at something like Doge, it's successful because of how many people just use it. In looking at things like referral programs and transaction fees, we're really short-sighted to the extent that we try to profit and take rather than give as a community. People
build.
Give and build, right? We want people to give to the community and we want to give back. But if, as a community, we have a take, we want everyone to give to the community and never give anything back, then, people don't want to give. And that's what we're seeing. So,
What about the idea of the openness to? I remember on One Mumble not too long ago, you mentioned that you really wanted to focus on bringing in developers and making it easy for there be no barriers to entry for developers, and you're moving in that direction. The work that you're getting Michael to do on the API, the Polynex RPI, and what have you is good, and moving in that direction. But do you think that's a major shortcoming that has been an impediment in the past that you're now correcting?
I missed a key word or two in there.
Sorry. It has to do with, I see a new direction about enticing developers and how you're moving in that direction with Michael in the work he's doing with the Polynex style API. But documentation's another aspect. And much of the documentation, I feel, has to come from you. And I think that your position on that is that the documentation is already very good. I'm not sure if that's the case. That's just my perspective. But do you see that in the past that has been a major impediment to bringing in new people because they see the barriers to entry to be very difficult, and I'm glad to see that that's changing now. But is your perspective that now we should start seeing more movement in that regard, or do you think that this is just kind of a natural evolution and it really wasn't that big of a stumbling block in the past?
So there's different types of development that you can do. Add-on services, our APIs are very well documented by Xerox. Thank you, Xerox, for everything you've been doing there. In the C++ code, there is a lot of Doxygen documentation, and it's segmented. And anyone who's actually interested in building something, if they ask questions, how do I do this? How do I do this? Those questions, we're ready and able to support and answer those questions. There, anyone who can read C++ and Doxygen, we've segmented things out so that you can take something like stealth. There's a few files that we can point to. So you look at those files, it's a complete example of an isolated feature. And we've isolated all the little features, whether it's withdrawal permissions or market functions or whatnot. We've divided them up in the code so you can see that each feature is relatively independent. There are also lots of branches on GitHub of like partial features that have been stubbed out. And I even posted on the forum a while back an outline of how you do this. But we're more than willing to support any developer who has a feature they want to write if they're writing code. I think people they want to see a tutorial and want to be spoon-fed everything, and that's good, but the time it takes to document and write a good tutorial is time that's not being spent doing all the other things everyone wants us to do, fixing critical bugs, and so on and so forth. And there hasn't been, I haven't been approached by any developers or haven't seen any questions on the forum of how do I do X. If I start seeing how do I do X, I will write a question. But if it's open-ended, how do I create a generic smart contract on BitShares? That's not serious.
Yes, I understand. I think you're absolutely right. And listening to that feedback and being sensitive to what people are asking for is really important. I guess I'm looking at it from kind of an outsider standpoint to the degree that I look at other projects and the level of documentation that they provide and contrast that with what I see in BitShares. And that's where I think I'm getting my impression. Maybe that's a false impression and it's not accurate. But it does seem to be quite different in other projects like Ethereum in terms of how the level of the documentation and the details, the kind of the higher level of perspective of how you do what you described in the code as how it is blocked off with certain features. That's good. That's a higher level perspective. And if that was surfaced in more of a descriptive documentation, verbally or on a blog or something, then that would be what I'm looking for. But at any rate, I appreciate your feedback on that, and I think I understand your perspective a little better.
So I think a lot of people lose track of the fact that I'm trying my best to bring value to BitShares without taking from BitShares. With finding alternative means, alternative revenue models for myself that allow me to make money while benefiting BitShares. So from a personal perspective, writing documentation for BitShares doesn't help me make money for my own thing, my own self, and BitShares isn't paying for it. So if you want things like infrastructure-like stuff being done for BitShares, stuff that benefits everyone or no one, that's the type of thing that worker proposals are designed for. And that's why I suggested that if a lot of people have expectation of Cryptonomics to just work on BitShares and do whatever is the bidding of the BitShares stakeholders, versus whatever is the most profitable business that we want to get into. So if we wanted to get in a mutual aid society, we're like, well, you're not working on the DEX anymore. Like, well, we're not being paid to work on the DEX. And the business models that we can get into on the DEX, things like being an exchange, being an open ledger, those are all regulated activities that have a very high barrier to entry and very high cost for us. And that's not even our strong suit. So we can't build those businesses on BitShares. So we have to find other businesses that we can build. So when it comes to things like documentation, we're willing to document, we're willing to support and enhance and do what the BitShares stakeholders want, but we can't do that if we can't feed ourselves, and so on and so forth. So I suggested the creation of some worker proposals, like 4 different ones, so that people can vote for various levels of funding. For Cryptonomics to work on just maintenance, support, enhancements of the core protocol, the stuff that everyone benefits from, but there's no direct profit motive in doing those things. And we haven't created those worker proposals yet, but I think that is one way that as a community we can fund better documentation. So I'm really concerned that a lot of the things I'm saying here can be interpreted in a very bad way. And I apologize for failure to communicate that.
Can I say something,
Do
Fuzzy?
you mind if I just spit in here real quick? There's an idea that I had a while back wherein you have people like Xerox, who everybody in the community really does trust. And there's no reason why they wouldn't, right? I mean, my God, he's probably one of the only people who has many posts on the forum as you, and he's in the newbies section most of the time helping newbies with, and that's how he gets so many of them. And he's doing all the documentation, or a lot of it. He has people who are working with him. What about a worker proposal or something like that to pay him to distribute to people who help with that effort, so we can kind of crowdsource it from the people within our community?
Like I said, we need giving to go both ways, and crowdsourcing and rewarding those who do things, particularly without requiring large campaigns and voting for people, will greatly help. Just small little bits here, $1 here, $5 there, can reward people for fixing documentation things. And it's not an exact science. It's just paying little bits to lots of people helps. So
Bytemaster, can I ask, what's the timeline for getting worker proposals and also creating committee members into the GUI? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that aren't technically savvy, and I couldn't create a worker proposal right now if I wanted to, and I'm wondering if that's something that is high up on the list of of things to do.
We can create a worker proposal to continue to enhance those things. Those are the type of features that benefit BitShares, but which we don't have the funding to do, right? I'm looking at ways of making money just so I can keep going. And I'm trying my best to avoid diluting the stakeholders, but I think we need to realize that paying for these types of features, they benefit everyone. And I think
I would vote for that worker proposal only because I feel like we've got a lot of things that are incomplete. You know, we're not working with a full toolbox here, and you know, a lot of the things, especially the governance features, are really important to get everyone feeling like they can participate. And I had another quick question, Bytemaster. As far as feedbacked assets go, is that something that is kind of bundled in with the stealth feature? I mean, is that going to be something you're implementing along with stealth, and then that will be able to be used, you know, in the future afterwards?
well, feedback assets inherently imply a hard fork to allocate fees to those assets. We are putting some groundwork in place to make it easier to create additional feedback assets in the future. So yes, the work we're doing for the stealth proposal is laying the groundwork for future feedback assets being cheaper.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment?
Out of curiosity.
Sure.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I was sort of listening and you know, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not a coder, I'm not a developer, but I'm showing up, and it seems a lot like you want more developers than you want other people, and that's okay. My last 5 blog posts, for example, were about businesses that would be worth between $1 and $10 billion if we had a fast, efficient blockchain to make them happen. Unfortunately, the blockchain doesn't exist on its own. The blockchain needs to exist in concert with something which increases human productivity. And that's my definition of wealth: is somebody's wealthy to the degree that they can increase the productivity of other people. So, you know, writing an API between 2 big whales doesn't entitle a developer to infinite wealth. It's the partnership with how does that API or how does that blockchain, you know, advance the productivity of all the people. So you're looking for money. You know, we've got these ideas out there. There's you know, there's Certify, Bidpool, Uber for airlines. I mean, these are viable business plans that we're publishing, and we just need a blockchain. We need extremely simple blockchains, and this is money. This is real money. But I come and you sound like you don't want me here, or you want a developer, and I don't have that.
No, that's not the case at all. People like you are exactly the people you want, because you are just like me, right? You've identified, you know, Airbnb, Uber style apps that could be on a blockchain, and I've been looking at things like that, right? There's lots of this sharing economy, direct peer-to-peer businesses, cutting out the middleman kind of thing. There's huge opportunities there. They all need a blockchain, and they all benefit from network effect. So I'm not looking for programmers, although programmers are useful. The number one thing we need is to welcome businesses and to help those businesses deploy on a platform. And that's why I was saying at the beginning that I like Ethereum because businesses can deploy on it without having to ask anyone's permission, and at least as long as you stick within their defined scripting environment, it's within the control of the business. But ask anyone who's looking to create a business, pros and cons of building on a platform you don't control. And that's the challenge we face. Every business wants to use blockchain technology like graphene to build those businesses. So, but why should they build on BitShares? And the reason they should build on BitShares is to interact with all the other businesses that build on BitShares. But if there are no other businesses that build on BitShares, because the BitShares network doesn't like feedbacked assets, wants to make sure that as much revenue as possible goes to the BitShares holders and not to the new business that's bringing value to BitShares, It's kind of like the music industry, wants to give the artists a few cents and keep all the royalties for all the songs that are sold. Right? It's we don't want to be like the music industry. We want to give the artists and the small businesses. We want to give them the vast majority of the reward, and BitShares will just keep a small percent for itself.
One of the things that BitShares can do, now I've looked at a lot of blockchains, and I'm still hanging on to BitShares. I have high hopes for it. One of the problems, we've got hundreds of thousands of people who would use this blockchain application, and they're engineers. They're very technical people. They really, really make things. There's real life proof of work, but they don't want to know how blockchains work. I'm having a hard struggle with them trying to explain to them how a blockchain works. It's sort of like an airplane. It's easy enough to fly, but it's very, very difficult to build. So if I'm describing how to fly one, it's simple. If I'm describing how to build one, it's difficult. If I could just leave that whole conversation out and just say, hey, engineers, here's something that works, and then you guys understand the mechanics, and make it work, I think we have a really good partnership. And if right now I've got some 8 engineers now playing around with Open Ledger, and it's just brilliant. The stuff that I can demonstrate, showing I created an asset called a quant. I gave it a backstory. It's brilliant, and that's gotten me a very long way. But then I get stuck, and I'm looking for somebody who knows how to unstuck me, and there's nobody out there. But again, we're struggling. We're trying really, really hard, and I appreciate you speaking to that here.
I wanted to reiterate, sorry, just my previous point, because I really feel like I know it's only been a couple months since we've launched this new chain, obviously, but the one of the things to if we had 100 people that were able to create worker proposals, and it only costs what, $10 or $15 or whatever. I mean, all of those proposals, eventually you would start to see people coming out of the out of the woodwork and say, oh wow, look, there's all this stuff going on. All these people want to do these things. Yeah, I think I like that one. Yeah, I think I like that one. Boom, vote your stake. I mean, there's a lot of people that haven't even claimed their stake yet because who knows what the reason is. I think maybe stealth might be some of the reason. But anyway, how many worker proposals actually exist or have even been, launched right now? Like 10 of them, maybe, in the last 3 or 4 months. So I just think that we don't have the full toolbox exposed to the common person yet. We don't have, I think one of the really good ideas that I heard, and I know this would, be, take some time to implement too, is having a sort of a, I don't think you call it a sandbox, but a fake DEX, one where people can go on and get allocated 100,000, fake BTC or BTS and go play around with each other, and kind of like you do on the trading platforms where you can, trade fake money and see, okay, have it matched to the real world so you can say, oh, I would have made money here, I would have lost money, basically what we're talking about
let
is
them use those tokens, then turn around and gamble a little bit to get some actual BTS or something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying, Bytemaster, is just I'm really looking forward to you getting a work proposal out there to have Cryptonomex finish up exposing the current features in the GUI so that we can be working with a sort of a full toolbox. And I feel like they're, for the cost of a worker proposal right now, that we're going to see a lot more people just putting out worker proposals and giving people the option to vote on them. Which
I think that SVK is actively working for BitShares directly as a worker. I think that would be, it's a worker proposal that's already out there. We should ask him to do that feature. That way, people forget that we have developers doing stuff for BitShares that aren't Cryptonomex. So that would be a good way, but also having additional workers too. So I think you're absolutely right that making it easy for people to earn money is the key. So,
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to sneak in here, because real quick, everybody, please make sure that if you haven't already signed the guest book, that you please do so now or as soon as possible. And then, secondly, I wanted to kind of piggyback off of Crypto Prometheus with what he's talking about, some of these features that, I mean, are you guys planning on having a worker proposal to build those out already, or is that something that you were thinking no? And also like more for third parties, they would just come in and do it. And also, are there any people in the crypto field that you would like to see work on BitShares? Those would be two questions that I've been trying, like, not to reach out and interrupt anybody, but those are two questions that have been frying in my mind.
I like to see everyone work on BitShares. No, that's not terribly useful. People need to be motivated to work on something that's passionate to them. And that means that they need to be able to get, if you're going to expect people to be startups, most of the people in the crypto space are entrepreneurial startup type people. The 9-to-5 employee is not the type of person who you want working on a crypto project. You want someone who has vision, who is trying to get oversized rewards. And they take risk now so that if they're successful, then they can retire wealthy. That's those are the type of people that are in crypto, and that's why it's very hard to get people to join a platform that they don't have stake in.
Which is one of the beautiful things about delegated proof of stake, and it has been to me from day one, is that we can actually allocate, at least from the perspective of the community, to the individuals who are adding value to the blockchain in a very customized and dynamic way. And no other blockchain can do that. Which goes back to the governance features, though, that Crypto Prometheus is talking about. I think that user interface aspect is probably one of the most important things. Of course, SVK is busy on that trading interface too, and I'm sure if he starts working on the governance stuff, people are going to be thinking differently. But stuff like follow my vote and things like that, I'm personally looking forward to that. That'll be the one that really gets me going.
There's a lot of really exciting stuff that I see people I've been talking to that are working on things that they just haven't gone public yet. There's a lot of opportunity here. And one thing that I can say for certain is that I am continually trying to succeed. And I am trying to take care of all the people who have helped me succeed. So whether you own BitShares or Brownies or anything like that, or Cryptonomex stake, I am looking to give back from what I'm able to do. I give it my best, and I have every financial incentive to give it my best. So that's one thing to keep in mind here is we don't necessarily, you have to fail 5 times before you succeed. And each time you fail at something, you learn, you improve, and you do better, and you're more likely to succeed the next time. So we produce something amazing here. If you ignore the price and you just look at the technology in Graphene, the Open Ledger platform, when I step back and I just try to be objective, I am actually amazed at the trading interface and the fully featured exchange and how seamless things are. I get so caught up in the details of things that I don't use the wallet every single day myself. And sometimes I just take back and try to get perspective on what it is we produce, and it's an amazing piece of technology. But technology is nothing without people. And so where we've succeeded on the technology front, we've failed on the people front. But succeeding on the people front is a joint effort of everyone in the community. And I'm trying my best to be welcoming to people and not push people away, to help grow the vision, and to learn as I go. But obviously we all have our strengths and weaknesses.
What in Genesis was saying a minute ago about feeling frustrated that he's having a hard time getting up on the learning curves required to move forward with a business because he's not technical. How do you address that concern, Bytemaster?
Well, I've long said that putting something on a blockchain doesn't make it successful. You have to have a business plan that works without a blockchain. And then putting it on a blockchain is an added benefit. So I think part of the reason why the DEX is struggling is the business model for exchanges, as the centralized exchange model. There's lots of competition doing that exact same thing, and they've got the advantage of being able to take fiat, hold money, and they privatize everything, right? They control the experience, they control the fees, so we need to be as good as the centralized exchanges in every way, and then the fact that we're on a blockchain is just what makes us better. But you can't take any just random business plan and say put it on a blockchain and it's magically a viable plan. A blockchain adds robustness, integrity, and resilience against government attack, which means that some businesses might have to be on a blockchain in order to survive the regulatory risks, but the business model itself should be viable if it was a centralized business model and they didn't have to worry about government persecution.
It sounds like what you're saying, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it sounds like what you're saying is that one of the reasons in Genesis is struggling is because they don't have that solid business plan.
No, we have an extremely solid business plan. Everything around
I'm
you.
asking from Bytemaster's standpoint, because
I don't know what their business plans are. I'm talking in generalities here. So if you've got a very solid business plan and you know exactly, I want, this is how I would design the user. These are the actions the users will take, and as a result of these actions, this is how their account balances should change, and so on and so forth. The blockchain is nothing more than a database, and if you can describe your business plan and the incentive structure and the data you want to track, I can put it on a blockchain for you in almost no time. I can say how to put it on a blockchain. Where it gets tricky is usually spam, Sybil attacks, things like that. In normal centralized systems, those things are managed by having the admin being able to filter things out, being able to do IP address filtering, email verification. So there's lots of techniques that have been used in a centralized environment that can't be used in a decentralized one. But you can take most ideas, and assuming you can define it well enough to build it as a traditional website, I could build the exact same thing on a blockchain and can do the one-to-one mapping for you. This is what your website is, this is how you put it on a blockchain. So I'm available to discuss that. So then at the end of the day, it comes down to, well, what programming language and what libraries do you use to implement it? And that's a level of knowledge that requires developers who know how to use SQL and PHP and JavaScript or whatever the language of the day is.
It seems like you're missing the point of my question. I mean, you're going into a lot of technical details, which is not
Could I
the issue.
real quick, Tom?
Why don't you ask
Go
me?
ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I hate to interrupt you. I feel like maybe we should let Dan Robles talk a little bit about because he's been kind of misunderstood here, and I've been biting my tongue, but it's kind of important that I think that he get to explain what he was talking about.
Absolutely,
in the
I'm trying
context
to do
of
what
all
I'm
this.
trying to do what you were doing, and that is I want to bridge the gap between what Dan Robles is trying to achieve and the frustration I heard him express and what Bytemaster has expressed. I want to get those two guys together because I really think that if they can get together, that there's a mending that can go on here and make Dan Robles successful. But I'm feeling a disconnect between the two, so I'll step out and see what can be done here.
Well, the thing is, what we're talking about is it is a successful business plan because this is what people do all day long anyway. They go to buildings that don't fall, airplanes land on time. I mean, the mechanics of life work very, very well, and the incursion of government sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. And some would argue how and why. But the mechanics of life work. Engineers, you don't pay much attention to them because everything works. So it's a very viable business, and in every facet of that, I know how to bring a blockchain to. And I'm willing to do the work to educate myself, and I know there's a learning curve, and there's a lot of effort that you need to know to understand or wrap your head around the mechanics of blockchain and why it's good, when to use it, when to not use it, etc. I haven't been able to get to the point where I'm actually coding stuff, but I've put the time into learning. But what I can't do is get other people to put that same amount of time into learning in order for them to understand, oh yeah, let's go forward with the blockchain process. They don't have the time to learn. They don't have the patience. They're off doing other things. So I need a very, very simple way to say, you plug it in, and here's the out. Here's the black box. It goes in, it comes out. And then I need to have that black box managed by other people. So that's kind of the interface that I'm looking for. And I complimented Bytemaster also because Open Ledger is like the only operating blockchain where people can see the vaults open and close every 3 seconds and say, oh, I get it now. So my data is sitting in that little box now. And I can say, yeah, exactly. This is what, there's no difference between signing a contract on a piece of paper and signing a contract on this thing in the cloud, and you can't bust it. And people get that, and they're ready to move based on that alone. But then when we get to the point where why are we pegged to BTS? And I don't have an answer for that. It's a simple question. I need folks to answer it. And there's a bunch of simple questions that follow, and I think we're really, really close. And it wouldn't take much effort to get a very, very simple blockchain operational, and nothing really exotic. Just let's show it to people and see how it would work, and then they'll come on board. So that's my frustration, is that we are so close. And
Thanks. I think what you said there is exactly what I've experienced, and I've seen those thoughts expressed by a lot of people. The entrepreneurs, the people trying to start these businesses, they want to do something on a blockchain. There's very, very few people out there who understand the design philosophy of blockchains, and you can't just hire any random developer and say go do it, because you're right, they need to learn it. They have to go through everything you've gone through to learn it, which is why companies like Cryptonomex and a dozen other companies in the space, they've got a real niche of lots of people coming looking to get things done and built, just because that experience and that knowledge is relatively restricted. So someone made a point here. The thing about Ethereum, and Ethereum goes a long way to doing what you want, is if you program in their language, you can't do something that's going to break consensus. It sort of forces you into this rigid mold of doing something that consensus can be reached upon. And so it's kind of like training wheels on there. Whereas if you program in Graphene or any other language, you've got to know to avoid non-deterministic behavior. Initialize all your variables and don't use language features that are the results are undefined, because that will break consensus. And that's a level of knowledge that requires programmers to have a lot of discipline and awareness of the language they're using. And it's very, very hard to create a system that is bulletproof. For you throw some developer at it and they can't mess it up. So part of the goal of Plasma was to separate out the process of organizing user actions and signed contracts into an irreversible ledger and interpreting the state. But you still have the issue that when you're interpreting the state, you need to do that in a deterministic manner, or people don't necessarily know what the outcome's going to be. And then it's easy to do for one application, but then when you try to make my application talk to your application, that's when things get really complicated. So I guess what I'm saying is there is no easy solution. If you're going to build something on a blockchain today, it's going to be much, much more expensive than building the same business model off of a blockchain, primarily because knowledge gap and the inexperience, difficulty in hiring developers. But what we're working on at Cryptonomex is tools to make it easier. A lot of the Plasma wallet stuff that James Caffey has been working on is all focused around making private key management transparent to the web application developer, so that you can build your web app without having to know how to do the cryptography. But then there's still the backend database and the business logic, and how do you implement that in a deterministic manner? I think over the past 20 years, websites, Web 2.0 sites, they've been built in a very sloppy manner. There is no attempt at making sure things are reproducible. So when you go to a blockchain, you're saying, I want to build a higher quality web application than everything else out there. That it's like saying, I want to switch from building with wood to building with steel. But you gotta, not just anyone can cut steel and weld steel, whereas, most people can saw and nail and put together wood. But the steel building will last a lot longer. It's a better design. It's a more robust system, but it takes longer. It's more expensive to produce. And so I think that's the problem a lot of businesses are facing, is how do I build with steel as efficiently as I used to with wood? And all the programmers out there, they don't have the mindset and the discipline that blockchains demand. Particularly when you're dealing with financial things. The financial processes that banks use go through years and millions of dollars worth of audits off of every little code change, and they haven't changed their software in a decade or 2 decades or more, because it was that expensive to create in the first place. So when people look at blockchains and they say that they see it using for Bitcoin and financial transactions, and they want to go use it for all kinds of smart contracts, you're looking at a type of code that traditionally existed within banks and people paid much, much more for it. So it's gotten a lot cheaper. It's gotten so cheap that it almost looks like it's within the grasp of everyone, but it's still more expensive to build and use than the good enough systems that we're all used to. And so that's the challenge, is centralized exchanges are good enough. They don't need to be on a blockchain. And the cost of moving them to a blockchain is very high.
Well, we've got other ways around that. We got something called the value game, where once you have a blockchain, you can now reassign incentives around a much broader spectrum of people, and that distributes costs more broad. I mean, I could explain to you how we beat that, but it shouldn't be. That I think we're really a lot closer than many people think. What I find often is that the developers lack context. They don't really know how the world is wired, how things are put together, and how things actually do work. They focus on what's failing. And that's my biggest problem is getting the engineers to have context of software, and getting software developers to have some context about how things are really put together in the world.
Yeah, so there's two things. There's A, deciding to build on a blockchain, and then B, deciding which technology to use for your blockchain, whether it's graphene, rolling your own, or any of the other blockchain technologies out there. And then there's the business case for building on BitShares. And BitShares, to make that business case make sense, requires a community that's very flexible in allowing new businesses to build on it and doesn't charge them too much. So as much as possible, you build on BitShares so that your smart contracts and your business can interoperate with the same currency and the other smart contracts available. So if you have assets involved, you can take advantage of all the work that goes into withdrawal permissions and vesting balances and the markets and all that stuff. You build on BitShares so you can get that. If you build your own app, then you're going to have to go through third-party systems like BlockTrades or Meta Exchange or something to move tokens from one blockchain to another, so that people can then trade and get those benefits. So you see people trying a whole range of different approaches out there, and each approach, the Ethereum approach, the BitShares approach, the Bitcoin approach of never changing anything, they each have their benefits, and they're each making different compromises. So if you're looking at trying to figure out how to put a business on a blockchain, I am available for consulting on that. And a lot of people come to me for that, just to help understand their problem on a blockchain, what options are available, what things like that. So I can answer those on a very specific basis. It's hard to do generally. I'd like to address one thing. We learned BitShares network temporarily went down a week ago, or a couple of days ago. The node states kept operating, but we encountered a bug that prevented any new blocks from being produced. I'd like to thank all the witnesses out there who were available to get the network back up and operating in just a couple hours. That was a huge effort, and highlight something from that experience. One is, at no point in time was anyone's funds at risk, and we were able to recover because it's a public ledger. Everyone knew exactly where we were. All it meant was temporary down for maintenance, and we're back up in a couple hours with a fix. So,
the benefits of the blockchain.
And the issue we face here is as blockchain applications get more and more complex, it becomes exponentially more difficult to verify every single thing that can happen. And you can have a system that's running for a very long time that just hasn't encountered that one magical rounding error case of that causes something to fail. So that's the other challenge that we're going to be facing as we look at these blockchain applications. And as more and more people contribute code, integrating their apps into the overall BitShares picture is a bug in the code of one application can impact the entire network. And that's also a benefit of Ethereum's approach, is they've isolated it down so that the surface area they have to protect against is relatively small. Their virtual machine, make sure that that behaves and the applications will be okay.
Someone actually asked earlier about your thoughts about implementing it with a virtual machine. Have you had any talks with IAM and any of those people?
I very much want to see a fee-backed asset implement the Ethereum virtual machine and or any other virtual machine system for smart contracts that comes out into BitShares. There's no reason why the BitShares network can't support simultaneously all of those applications. The primary thing the BitShares network will have to look out for is charging enough fee to handle the performance impact of those virtual machines. So you can have those virtual machines to build apps. And the other thing I'd like to see is that when we design it, is that it's easy to swap out the scripting environment with a hard-coded, optimized version. So that, but anyway, I would definitely like to see that on BitShares because I think that it's a protected environment that allows people to get in and start doing stuff without having to worry about breaking the whole system. So, yeah, I've mentioned Ethereum a lot and a lot of the benefits of Ethereum in the past couple of weeks. I want to mention the benefits of BitShares because they're still there. Ethereum still has significant weaknesses. You can't do what BitShares does on Ethereum. It's just not capable of performance, or scale. And we're more flexible. We can reinterpret how we store data in the past to track extra statistics and to fix bugs that occurred in the code. Whereas Ethereum is stuck. Their data model is part of the consensus. We've got a little bit more flexibility there. So it's not open and shut. And the other thing is if you're building businesses and you just want a blockchain, then if it's going to be a centralized private blockchain that you're in control of, graphene makes more sense because you're in complete control of it. And you don't need a public ledger with interoperability with everyone else's app. You just need to worry about your app. So there's pros and cons with all these different things, and it's always engineering trade-offs. But I'm trying to be more appreciative of the good things that our so-called competition has, because they could learn from us and we can learn from them. And recognizing what we can learn from them can help us grow. So that's
Definitely.
I'd like to bring up a technology that possibly no other blockchain has that could be a major competitive advantage. And it's something I discovered recently called holacracy and sociocracy, which are open source governance models that have been around for a couple decades. I don't know how I didn't hear of them. And the founders are Rothbard fans and von Mises fans. And Zappos, with 1,600 employees over the last couple years, has converted entirely to this system.
Can you describe it a little bit?
Yeah, I put some links, and it's described as, it's not a unanimous system, it's described as distributed authority. And it's a little bit complicated. There's a book version, but there's also a lot of free resources. It is open source. There's a constitution, and it is designed to distribute authority and to be able to work faster than requiring complete consensus on everything.
Interesting.
Yeah, if you post the link again in the...
One of the things that I like...
Yeah, I'll post the links again right now.
One of the things that I was loving about the idea of mutual aid societies was that there are many different societies that already exist that we could kind of tokenify. You know, we could give them, you know, get them using their own tokens, because every community has people who are trusted enough by the community because of what they've done for the community, that that if they issued tokens, that they probably would be valuable to the community members. So, you know,
I'm going
it's
to
just
have
a
to
layer
go,
that we're layering
guys.
on top of this. Yeah, no problem.
But it was
Thank
great
you for
talking
showing
with
up,
y'all.
and thank
Just
you for yeah, definitely.
Just want to let everyone know that I am working very hard to make sure that I give back more to everyone in BitShares than you guys have given me. Right? I just want to let you know how much I appreciate everything every person here is doing. I want to help you succeed, and I think together we can all work there and achieve it. So thanks again for showing up.
Definitely.
Happy New Year.
Definitely. Things are looking, you know, I look at them, and when I see the price drop, I just think to myself, my God, I'm going to be able to get in cheaper. I don't know when I'll be able to get more money to do it, but I'm hoping that, I shouldn't say I hope it stays low. But dang, man, if this isn't a time to buy, I don't know when is.